Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining this presentation on making $100 million hybrid casual game with Voodoo. Let me start with a quick intro. So I'm VP Core Gaming at Voodoo, which essentially means I'm in charge of all the production of new games in the hybrid casual space. But maybe before I dive into the topic, let me give you a quick recap of what Voodoo is and what we've achieved over the past 10 years, because we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So in 2013, the company was created by Alex Yazdi and Laurent Ritter. And for the first couple of years, they developed 2 to 3 games. It took a lot of time, a lot of production time. And they developed a game in particular called Quiz Run, which required a lot of content, a lot of work, and allowed only for little monetization and little scale. And so after 2 years, they realized it's going to be too hard if we keep going this way. We need to go faster. So they increased the volume, they increased the pace at which they prototype. And by fast prototyping, they got their first hit in 2016 with Paper.io. And that early success allowed, well, first to give visibility to the company. And many studios came to see us, wanted to have their games published with us. And so between 2017 and 2019, there was a lot of scale for the company, a lot of traction, a lot of new games. And in 2019, or end of 2018, beginning of 2019, Goldman Sachs invested $200 million in the company, which allowed us to further scale. We went into the casual gaming space, or at least we started to diversify into casual gaming, open new offices. And in 2021, we raised another close to $300 million, and we acquired Beach Bum. So that was 2021. The company was doing great, and in 2022, we had to do a major pivot, and we shifted our entire production from hyper casual, which is the core of what we were doing, into hybrid casual, because the hyper casual market was harder and harder for market reasons, competitive reasons. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's the successful pivot we went through in 2022 into the hybrid casual space. I'll go quickly through a few numbers. You know, when we were focused on hyper casual, we were focused on downloads. So we had accumulated a cumulative 6 billion downloads for all of our games. We had 300 million monthly active users. And now we are less focused on download, but we still keep this idea of marketability, which I'll get back to. Those are a few hits on the hyper-casual space that we had back in 2018, 2019. And now for the hybrid strategy. So, as I mentioned, there are 2 pillars to hybrid casual. We kept the strengths of hyper-casual with a very strong marketability, the ability to get a lot of downloads. But we added to those cores a very strong meta that allowed us to better monetize our users. So really getting the best of both worlds. And we addressed what we believe to be a gap in the market between low CPI, low LTV, which were basically what we were doing with games like Helix Jump, and very high CPI, very high LTV, such as Toon Blast or Candy Crush. And in the middle, you see that those are the few games that we managed to launch, and like such as Collect 'Em All or Mob Control, which I'll talk about in a second, which have a little bit higher CPI. We can scale a bit further than our hyper-casual games, but much higher LTV, which makes it much more attractive as well for us. And we also shifted for a business model where we had mostly interstitials into a much more balanced business model with a split between interstitials, rewarded videos, and in-app purchase. So let me give you an example with what we did on mob control. So this one is actually an interesting example because it started as a hyper-casual game. Back in 2021, we actually scaled the game as a hyper-casual game with below $1 CPI, close to $1 LTV. It had a strong core. We identified that there were actually a significant percentage of in-app purchase compared to the rest of our portfolio. Natively, we already had like 15-20% of our revenue coming from in-app purchase. And so we decided to try and hybridize the game. At the time, we weren't sure exactly what hybridization meant, but we gave it a go. And what we did, there are a few features that we added. So we improved the core. We did a lot of level design. We added a diorama, an armory, an in-app shop, and we started doing some events as well, such as weekend events. Here we put the example of a piggy race or leagues. And that allowed our LTV to grow from $1 per user to something like $4 or $5, and to scale the game, a game that had in the first year maybe 10 million of revenue, into a 100 million revenue game this year. So that's the best success we had on hybridization. And what does this model entail exactly? So there are 4 pillars to it. We kept the fast prototyping approach. So that's very important to us. The studios we work with still develop their early prototypes in 2 to 3 weeks. So we do a lot of volume. We test them very early, and we see if there is, well, 2 things: marketability and also engagement. We're much more focused on playtime than we used to be on hyper-casual. Then we split our organization. So that was the biggest shift, and that, I think, was the most impressive shift. Because when you have an organization of, let's say, close to 1,000 people, shifting everyone at once in just a few months is a remarkable feat. And we split our organization between our core studios and our live studios. So we still work today with 100 core studios, both internal and external, so that we publish games for. And we have a pool of live studios as well. So we have a lot of volume of prototypes coming in. When we have promising prototypes, we iterate on them. And then we launch the games. And if the equation is promising, we then hand it over to a live team that is going to work on the game, hybridize the same way we did for mob control, and do that for multiple years and make it a resilient game. The product strategy changed as well. That's very important. Hyper-casual was all about small toys, little engagement, monetizing very fast. Here we decided to focus only on 2 types of games, so puzzles on one hand and battlers on the other hand. And we also narrowed our studio base. So we used to work with hundreds of studios, now we only have 100, which is already pretty big, but we only kept the most talented studios that have the ability to deliver products fast, but also products of a very good quality so that we can hybridize them later. So those are just examples of the types of games I just mentioned. So the puzzles, such as Collect 'em All, the battlers, such as Mob Control. We even went into more niche areas, like realistic military games, which for hyper-casual was unthinkable. But now that we have higher LTV, we can afford higher CPI, and we can get into more niche games as well. And now let me get into a few numbers on, why hybrid casual makes sense. I mean, I mentioned the 6 billion downloads. It's not necessarily our main area of focus at the moment, since we're more into monetizing higher and not being totally mass market. The second most important piece on this slide is the $100 million revenue target that we've achieved with Mob Control and that we're replicating on a number of other games. We already have 10 games that are resilient in our portfolio and that have more than 20 million revenue. So we're building on that. We're getting the games to stack and building on that base for the years to come. So what is the next step for us and collaboration with studios? There are 3 ways that we work with studios. They can, work on new games with us. So we work on the ideation, we work on the process of creating the games, and we publish the games if they're promising. So we test them, they test them on our platform, and we publish the games if they're promising. We also take existing games that studios need help to scale. On the casual space, honestly, we're expanding into casual, possibly even mid-core at some point. So don't hesitate if you're interested even in these fields. We can also have a chat. And finally, we hire some people in-house. So we have internal studios. We built roughly 20 of them in the past couple of years, and we're looking to build more. For this, there are two ways. Well, of course, you can come and talk to me today, and if not, then you can go on our publishing, on our website, voodoo.io. There's a publishing page that explains everything, or you can reach out to studios at voodoo.io. Maybe just a little bit more color on what it means to publish games with us. We really accompany the studio on all the product cycle, so from ideation, testing, launching, and then optimizing. And as I mentioned, just for the last slide, we're looking for casual games, hybrid casual games, and even mid-core games. And that's it.
Okay, so we do have time for questions, and again, Voodoo has no stand here, so this is a good chance to ask them and find, because probably they will be harder to find. And actually, I have one question. Yep. Are you done with the shopping spree in Israel, or should we expect to see more?
I mean, we're always open to opportunities, whether it's M&A, publishing, partnering, hiring people. So we don't have like very near-term plans, but we'll be very happy to work with other Israeli companies. The other thing is our collaboration with Beach Bum has been fantastic. They're here today, and I think we managed to find like a very good culture fit, which allows them to work still very independently, but also be really part of the Voodoo family. So
okay.
More to come.
That is very interesting. So yeah, you have a question? Yeah. Okay.
So I'll repeat the question for everyone. Thanks for the question. What is the daily engagement for the games that we target? It really depends at what stage. But typically, for an early prototype, we would like to see a D0 playtime of 30 minutes. So D3 playtime of like roughly 60 minutes, because that would mean it's promising enough so that we can iterate on it.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. If you can shout. Maybe. If you can repeat shortly.
Yeah, I'll repeat shortly. So the question is, we took some of our IPs in hyper-casual to hybridize them. And in a few years, the hybrid market may become saturated. And in this case, what will we do so that our games don't stop growing, or actually how we compete in this market that becomes very competitive? It's a great question. The truth, I think the big difference between what we did in hyper-casual and what we do today is this core life structure that I described, in the sense that core games will remain on the new game creation, but then on the live side, we will have teams that will keep working on these games. And so we believe that progressively, our games will become even more and more resilient. And I also believe that there are a lot more barriers to entry on the hybrid casual space. And so I don't think that the market can become as saturated as fast as hyper casual.
Okay, and yeah.
You mentioned briefly at the end that you were looking into moving towards midcore.
Yeah.
Which kind of genres are you guys interested in, and how close to that hardcore area of gaming will you be prepared to kind of try and get to?
So the question is, I talked about moving into midcore, and what subgenres are we interested in that area, and how we plan to move into this. The only thing I'll say on this question is, it's a bit early, so we are definitely planning to move into midcore, but it's going to take a couple of years. The way we approach this is we need to build even stronger and bigger studios to get in that area, because the development time may take maybe a bit more complicated than the hybrid casual games. So we're actually starting to build some teams. That will take a bit of time. Then we'll work with them on the ideation, and then we'll develop the games. We already know, we'll probably start with genres that are a bit easier or a bit closer to what we did, which is like tower defense, strategy games. Probably not directly on the 4X side, because we know that that's going to take a lot more time and it's much further from what we know how to do.